So, Beeves, welcome to the Crypto Princess channel. How are you today?
I'm doing very good. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Beeves, just before we begin, the resident question I ask all of my guests is if I was to meet you in high school, what kind of person were you?
I would have been a cigarette smoking, three colored haired, um, what they called a hood. I wore either denim or leather jackets. I always had ripped up jeans because that was the thing at the time with bandanas wrapped around them. I was a metal kid. I was a punk rock kid, and I had wild hair like Nikki Sixx. I had wild hair like maybe Duran Duran. You know what I mean? I went through. So you would have seen me as this guy is weird.
I think you're fun.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
my thing.
Awesome. So, there's a lot of time that passed between high school and 2021 when you first got into crypto. Tell me roughly what were you doing in between that time?
I got a job very early in my life as a bill collector, which meant that I called people up and told them to pay their bills. I got in with a very nice company at that point, and I was good at collecting bills, and they promoted me to management. And then they moved me from, I was originally from Louisville, Kentucky. They moved me to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and promoted me again. I got promoted a couple of times. Then I became an operations manager, and then they moved me to Cleveland, Ohio, where I lived for about 5 years. And then that office closed, and I was kind of out of sorts. I had been with the company since I was a child. I mean, basically, it was my first big job out of high school. So
Mhm.
I went to college for a year and found this, and then dropped out of college because I was making more money than I would have if I had gone to college. And I left that company because I wasn't happy, and moved to Chicago on a whim, and became the vice president of another company. And for the last up until 2 years ago, I was the vice president of a collection agency in Chicago, Illinois.
So you got into crypto in 2021. Now, for those people who are unaware, 2021 was a bull run year. We had two peaks. The first peak was in April 2021 when we hit 64,000 US dollars. And then in November 2021, we had the actual all-time high, which was 69,000 US dollars. It was a whirlwind from emotion. We ranged at 30,000 for a good couple of months as well. Not only was it a bull run year, but it was also the first year that you got into crypto. Tell me, how did you get into crypto?
Had some friends who talked to me about Dogecoin. Dogecoin suddenly became public, if you will. People started talking about it in media and in news and stuff like that. I had friends who were Dogecoin holders, and they pretended like they were experts at crypto because that's kind of what people do when they're in the know and you're not. So they told me about it. I missed it. It had already run up to 70 something cents, and there was just no path forward for me on Dogecoin. So I started looking for a crypto that I could get into, and that crypto ended up being something called Keanu. And that was just a meme coin. But the name struck me as a great idea, and it struck me as a good idea because there were two projects that were going to merge, and one of them, their initial was NU, and I don't remember what the other one was, and I guess it's irrelevant. They never merged, but they were going to make a crypto called Keanu, and it was two altcoins that were just becoming one altcoin. And instead, I found a meme coin called Keanu and put $200 in it, and within 3 days, it was like $5,000. So that was my start into crypto. And then the Keanu project was not very successful, but along the way, they asked me or they asked anybody who would step up and start creating content on YouTube. And I said, you know what? I'll do it. Why not? And at that point, I had no illusions of making money. I had no idea that YouTube would, become my job or, nothing like that. It was just an idea and a concept. So I started making the content, and then the next thing you know, I'm monetized, and I realized I have a very small audience with Keanu. So I started covering about 7 or 8 different meme coins over the time, and that started to blow up the channel to where it was worth it for me to just work on that channel all the time.
Okay, so you went straight into memes. You didn't go first into Bitcoin, Ethereum, utility coins, straight into memes.
Well, it's tricky to say that because, realistically, in order to get into meme coins at that point, you actually had to be into Ethereum. So I suppose my first purchase would have been Ethereum because you have to convert it on a swap, and meme coins were swap coins at that time. So my first experience was buying Ethereum, but it was just a bridge to get me to Keanu.
Okay, so around about this time, who was supporting you?
Really just the Keanu, just the Keanu community. And, I started to peel away some support from Saitama, which ended up being a $7 billion crypto at one point. I want to say the most supportive groups were Kishu. It was Kishu Inu, Sanshu, Sanshu. They were very supportive. And then and then another project called Starlink, which was shortened to Starl, Starl. Those were really the most supportive communities because they were much larger than Keanu. When I went to SHIB, one of the first places that I went was Shiba Inu, because I thought, what a great, that would be a great place to start to try to build an audience. So I went into their chat and I asked them, would it be okay if I covered you guys news-wise every day? Because I think it's important. Like, I shouldn't just come out and start talking about something without the approval of the dev team. I'm naive at that point, and I'm thinking that's the proper protocol and the way that you should be doing business. So I went in there and they banned me immediately and said that I was just trying to soft shill for every other project. So it was really just a bout of paranoia from SHIB. So I said, you know what? I'm not talking about SHIB then. And I talked about every other crypto except Shiba Inu.
Mm-hmm. How did your family feel about you entering into crypto?
My mother thought that it was, so a Ponzi scheme. That's what she would call it. My wife, my kids, they didn't know anything about it. So they were just like, oh, dad's not working out anymore. Now he's making videos on YouTube, whatever. You know what I mean? So, they were supportive, but they didn't understand very much about it, and they get their information kind of from me. So, they were very supportive though.
Okay. It's really interesting that you said you dived into YouTube. Did you have a YouTube channel beforehand?
I had a YouTube channel beforehand, but the only thing that I did with it was put up workout videos and like walking around sort of videos, and not something where I'm talking to people. Like, I'm not like, hey guys, it's me, Corey. I didn't do any of the neat stuff. I would just take videos and stuff like that, and I just upload it, and it'd get 10 views or 20 views or something like that over a course of time. You know what I mean? It was nothing that anybody would say was an up and coming YouTube channel or anything like that. So I had it, I just didn't really do much with it.
So how did your YouTube channel blow up? Did it blow up in 2021 in the bull run, or is this something that happened afterwards?
I got monetized October of 2021. And that was at the same time that a lot of the blow off top was getting ready to start. If you remember, like you said, around April is when China banned Bitcoin again, and that caused a massive dump in the market. And, everybody kind of cratered at that point. And then we got that big move that started on, I want to say it was about July 19, July 20. We got that big reversal. We got that move to the double top. And on the way up there, meme coins were absolutely dead, even though Bitcoin was still running. And then I want to say about October 11th or October 12th, we all woke up one morning and Keanu was up 3x, and Kishu was up 4x and 10x and then 20x. And, all of this money came flooding into the market around mid-October for a blow off top for meme coins. So that happened. And, that was about that was about the time.
Mm-hmm. So you were sitting in front of the camera talking about meme coins. Was it quite difficult in the beginning? How did you set up a episode?
So it was difficult because I still had a job. Now I'm the vice president of a company. So, and the president of the company, by the way, didn't work in the office. He worked from home. He was an old guy who just kind of lived at home. He would come in every few days just to say hi. So I would go into my office at like 6 a.m. in the morning. The office didn't open until 9. I would go in at 6 a.m. and I would work on making videos on my laptop in my office with brown panel walls behind me and everything. It was horrible, but it was a start. And I developed a show, and I went from intro, segue to the opener, whatever crypto to talk about for the day. And then I would just go down the list and say, this is what's going on with this crypto. This is the news for this crypto. This is the chart for this crypto. And then I would go to the next one. And then I would just do like a rant at the end, because I like the rants that Bill Maher and people like that would do in their shows to wrap up their show. So, I kind of formulate it like that. And that's what I did. And I would get done, and then I would get it uploaded before my employees would come in every day.
That's dedication. Okay, so at the end of 2021, 2022, we slid into a bear market. So in a bear market, even fundamentally strong projects can go to zero seamlessly overnight. Sometimes we had many black swan events. We had Terra Luna, the FTX. We had 3 Hours Capital, Voyager. So many black swan events. First up, were you aware of the difference between a bull market and a bear market?
Nope. No idea. I mean, people will talk to you about it, but you don't understand it unless you've actually been in it. So I had no comprehension that we were entering a bear market.
You talk about Luna a lot. What do you do? Do you trade it?
I trade it sometimes, but because it's a swap mechanism, just like, Uniswap or something like that, because it's a swap mechanism, then you're trading Luna Classic for USTC. I mean, you can cash it out if you want to. You can go to Weeks, or you can go to an exchange that supports it like Binance. You can cash it out for money, but I use it in a swap format. So basically, I buy a meme coin in their ecosystem. It pumps. I swap it back to Luna. Sometimes I think that USTC is going to pump. I swap my Luna or my Lunk over to USTC. I wait for the pump, and then I swap it back over and just accumulate a little bit more from time to time, just to give me something to do and take some risk and try to grow my bag.
Because I know you've got a lot of videos on it.
Yeah.
What else were you looking at in the bear market?
So in the bear market, there were quite a few that I'm fascinated, and many of them at this point, obviously for most people, if they don't understand, most of those have been a tremendous letdown. Crypto.com. I was a big fan of that one. I thought that one was it's obvious if you have crypto.com at some point that becomes, it goes crazy, but it never went crazy. Ethereum, big fan of Ethereum. I thought Ethereum, I still think that Ethereum is the big dog on the block, but you're thinking that Ethereum is going to lead the market and that nothing could go wrong. Well, everything could go wrong with Ethereum. They had bad leadership and, continued to bleed. Solana, because of what you said before, FTX, it was kind of on people's radar. It was doing pretty well. And then, FTX, because of the FTX collapse, put put Solana front and center on everything. So, you're watching Solana. And then after that, there's a lot of other projects out there that you're just looking to make happen or to get something out of. And then there's meme coins. And, the good part about my stuff was that meme coins were a means by which I could earn a living. And look, I was vice president of a company, and I was making way more money, or I make way more money doing meme coins than I do from working at a real job.
Awesome. Okay, so the bear market was quite warm and fuzzy for you then.
Well, I like to peel back the curtain and just kind of give people the real details. In February of 2022, I made
Mhm.
$47,000 making videos. In March of 2022, I made $27,000 making videos. In April, I made, I want to say 16,000, 15, a little over 15,000 just from making videos. Now the numbers after that go down exponentially, to not, and by the way, still a high number, but, not like that. That was the blow off of that meme coin market. So yeah, meme coins continued to provide for me for a very long time, actually.
We'll talk about meme coins when we come up to 2024.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 2023 now. So in 2023, we had Bencoin come out, which was another meme coin. And tell me about that. Tell me about Bencoin and your experience with Bencoin.
So first, it was not meant to be. It came out and was released and launched as a meme coin, but it was not meant to be. Ben had a big plan, and I guess now that it's dead, we'll reveal what the plans were going to be.
Oh,
So
and I should actually just mention, when we're talking about Ben, we're talking about Ben Armstrong
Ben
Bitcoin.
Armstrong here. So I got into Bencoin because a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should get some Bencoin." And I had been on Around the Blockchain. I had done a guest spot on Around the Blockchain with Ben Armstrong. And I had reached out to him and said, "Hey, man, what do I got to do to get on your show?" And he's like, "I'll give you a shot." So he put me on the show. And then they never called me back. And part of the reason was I was a Bencoin guy. Okay. Now, at that point, I did not know that they were on the outs. I did not know that Hit Networks, that TJ, that Nick Demondi, that all of these guys, that Drew, all of these, I did not know all these people had it in for Ben. And by the way, when I say something like Drew or something like that, I really don't think that they all did. This is really a TJ thing. I think TJ just, there had been some circumstances, which I will tell you, that happened that created whatever had happened. But I went on there and I was talking about Bencoin, and that kind of rubbed them the wrong way. So they never invited me back. Then I reached out to Ben. I'm like, "Dude, do I smell bad through like the wires or something? Like, why am I not being invited back? I crushed everybody on there, in my opinion." And he was like, "You know what? I don't know why. Let me check into it." And then he and I, that's at the point we started to strike up a bit of a friendship where, he's like, "You know what? I got your back, man. You got my back on Bencoin. I got your back for this. We're going to put you back on the show and do it again." So we ran it back one more time. And again, another good show. And then Ben decided that Bencoin was going to be more ubiquitous on his channel. And because of that, he invited me on, and he said that I was going to start being his guest every Monday through Friday
Is
to
this
talk
still on
about,
Hit? Is this
yeah,
still on Hit
while
Network?
still on
Okay.
Hit Networks on Bencoin. Now, here's what happens. He wants me to come on. I come on. They're supposed to, I'm in a green room, and they're supposed to get me ready for it. They're supposed to update me on what's going on, stuff like that. Nobody does a mic check. Nobody does anything. Nobody gives a shit that I'm there except Ben. And it was at that point that I said, "Oh, there is something really wrong here. That's whatever's going on here is not good." And I reached out to Cassie right afterwards, because at that point, Cassie and I are friends. And I said, "Hey, there's something wrong at Hit Network. Like, this is what they did. Like, they didn't even."
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
Cassie, what was her role at Hit Network?
Okay, so let me finish this one, then I'll explain Cassie. So then she said, "Well, I don't know. I'll talk to Ben." So she talks to Ben, and then Ben, of course, is now arguing and fighting with TJ, and they're doing it live on stream and stuff like that. Okay, now why did this all happen? There are, first of all, many different reasons people don't like Ben Armstrong. There are plenty of reasons to not like Ben Armstrong. Ben Armstrong has he's bipolar. He's got some issues. He's, super sensitive. He's super aggressive. He's a little bit of a wild man. Okay. Now, flashing back about 6 months before I'm even involved, at the beginning of 2023, TJ had negotiated a deal with Stake. Stake.com was a gambling website, and he negotiated a deal, and he got $50,000 a month out of stake.com, which seems like a pretty good deal. I mean, that seems like a reasonable deal. I would take stake. I would take $50,000 a month. You know what I mean? So Ben thinks that that he could get more out of them. So he says TJ's not doing a good job. Now they're already at odds over certain things. They're already uncomfortable and uneasy allies. Well, Ben goes out and hires and finds Cassie. And, I don't know how they met. I know that she posted a picture before she got hired of her reading Ben's book, Keeping Up with Crypto. And she was on a couch reading the book and stuff like that. And I think that for him was like, that's somebody who supports me. I want to support her. So he hires her to negotiate, because that's what she does. She negotiates deals. Instead of $50,000, she gets $1 million per month from stake.com. Then in her agreement, the team gets $950,000 a month, and she gets $50,000 a month. So she's not an employee of Hit Networks at all. She negotiated their deal, and then she got a cut of the deal. She got like 5% or whatever the number was. Okay. So she's getting a good deal. They've got a fantastic deal. Now TJ is mad at Ben. TJ is mad at Ben because Ben also has issues in which he just can't keep his mouth shut. And he starts threatening TJ, like, if she can get $1 million deal and you can get a $50,000 deal, what do I need you for? So they're now at odds tremendously because of him hiring Cassie. And she outdid him in every possible way. And that didn't sit right with TJ. So that leads to their split. Well, then after that show, and I'm like, there's something really wrong here. They're heading to ETH Denver. So they go to ETH Denver, and my phone rings. I'm asleep. 6 a.m. in the morning. My phone is ringing, and it's Ben and Cassie on three-way. These motherfuckers just locked me out of everything, and they're letting Ben go, and they're cutting everything. And they're like out here at ETH Denver, and all this kind of wild stuff is going on. Now, I'm getting this information directly from Ben and Cassie at the time. And the end result of it was that Discover, or, at that point, it was not Discover, it was Hit Networks. Hit Networks releases a statement that they've severed with Ben Armstrong, and that they were moving forward and stuff like that. Well, immediately Cassie reaches out to Stake. Stake cancels the deal. So they lost $1 million after this severance. And then from there, of course, Ben, who was the person who set everything up, Ben starts taking away, all the deals that they have with centralized exchanges and stuff. So now they have to rebrand, and they have to come up with something different. So they go their path. Ben goes his path. And then in the meantime, you got BenCoin out here that's just kind of in the flow. And then what you have is Ben held an enormous amount of the BenCoin supply, but he held it in his wallets that were associated with Hit Networks. And TJ, or whomever it is that's responsible over there, starts dumping all the BenCoin out of Ben's wallets and out of the Hit Network wallets, and then out of their personal wallets to wreck BenCoin. Purposely. Like that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to wreck all of the people that watch their show. So none of this sits right with me. And that takes us to, where we got with BenCoin, where Ben calls me freaking out one day because one of the guys that he was friends with at the location shows up at his hotel. Now, at the same time, Ben and Cassie had begun an affair. Okay. Ben's still married at the time. Ben's still living at home. They'd started an affair. Now, TJ then goes to Ben's house to tell his wife about it. Just some shady stuff. And listen, I'm not one to support you if you're unfaithful to somebody, but it's also none of my business. Okay. So, I'm not the moral police. I'm not here to judge him for his morals and, relationship. And I'm not here for that. It doesn't matter. You're having an affair on somebody doesn't mean that you can't run your company There's nothing in bylaws that would say anything like that. So then they say that he's on drugs. And it is true, by the way, that he's on drugs. Ozempic. He was on Ozempic and he was taking steroids. Now, he was not taking recreational pharmaceuticals or any kind of real drugs that would have been a problem. In fact, most of the people that you offer him a drink, he won't take a drink. You offer him weed, he won't smoke weed. Like, he's not that guy. But he is on Ozempic because people called him fat. And he is taking steroids because people called him fat. Everything was about his need to look better in life. So they use that to try to create this, scenario and narrative that he's an evil villain in this whole story. Then they tell his wife what's going on with his, at the time, mistress, and that leads to a very, a wild sort of scenario where they create cause for him to be let go. Then they steal from him. They steal his Lamborghini from him, which, by the way, if you go to the court records, even the owners of the company, the current owners of the company, were admitting it was Ben's Lambo, but they were extorting it out of him. And by the way, there are, I don't know that they're publicly available, but there are a lot of different conversations and messages. And Ben was very sharp about this. He recorded everything, and I've heard all the recordings. They were shaking him down. Like, they were doing everything they could to take money from him and they were bleeding his wallets dry. And by the way, I say his wallets because, he was the face of Hit Networks. It was Hit Networks wallets, no matter what. I think it's seedy and shady for them to do it the way that they did it. But at the end of the day, again, if it's a company wallet, it's a company wallet. So, and at that point, I'm still on Team Ben, but, problem there. So that leads us to BenCoin. BenCoin was not working right. We start talking about how we're going to make an educational coin. We're going to do all these kind of things. We got this big plan on what's going to happen with BenCoin, but it won't work that way. So we need a V2. So we hire New Genesis. New Genesis is a company that writes smart contracts. There's a guy there by the name of Hussein Faraj, and he's Ben's friend. Now, when I say Ben's friend, his friend, like I'm his friend, okay? We're not really best buddies. We don't go drinking. We don't party. We don't hang out. You know what I mean? We're just crypto bros together. So friends, probably not the right thing, but he likes Hussein a lot. Hussein sets up a new smart contract. The liquidity in the project at that point was over $1 million in liquidity. The market is still a bear market, so we're continuing to bleed on meme coins. Eventually, it's about a $700,000 liquidity pool. One morning we wake up, and by the way, at this point, I'm no longer involved with BenCoin. I'm no longer talking about it. I've already sold all my BenCoin, not because I don't like Ben or I'm not getting along with Ben or anything like that, but because they told me it's probably going to be at least 6 months before anything happens. So you should sell right now. And then 6 months from now, like we'll get back into BenCoin. We need to build in the background for a little while because these things take time. And we want to set up educational content. We want to set up, like, you need an app, you need all this kind of stuff. And then, it's going to be my face, it's going to be Ben's face, and we're going to be talking to you about what you need to know about crypto. Educational content we're going to provide to you for free as part of the BenCoin ecosystem. And so we wake up one morning and the liquidity has been pulled. And of course, because Ben is having his arguments and fights with people publicly and stuff like that, everybody thinks that Ben just stole from everybody. Now, that's the narrative. Hussein comes out and he says that one of his programmers and one of his developers did it. And to me, I'm not a forensic guy. Zach XBT gets involved, by the way, because even some of my friends who are on Team Discover Crypto at that point are saying that Ben stole. Well, turns out they were wrong and they were lying and they were deceptive to you about it. He did not. And Zach XBT confirmed exactly what had happened, that somebody had done, like he was able to track it and prove that it was not Ben, at least.
So who is that? A YouTuber?
Zach XBT is a forensic investigator in
Okay.
crypto. He's one of the most popular. When something goes wrong in crypto, you call Zach XBT. So Zach confirms that I'm right about what's happening here. And so then that leads us to New Genesis saying, we're going to make this right. We're going to fix this. We're going to take care of this and stuff like that. Okay. Now, Bencoin is dead. To finish the story of Bencoin, 2 months ago, Hussein Faraj was arrested for fraud. And this is not the first crypto he did this to. And by the way, Ben did not believe it. Ben did not believe that his friend his friend would have done this. And when we're like, hey, well, okay, well, what's his real name? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, where does he live? And he's like, I don't know. Again, they're not friends. It's a crypto bro. And this crypto bro long conned him for a bunch of money. So Hussein Faraj was arrested in Australia for stealing the liquidity on 4 different crypto projects. And you can look that up, by the way. It's in the Australian news. For anybody who's curious, it's Hussein, Hussein Faraj, Faraj. And he was arrested for New Genesis scam. His brother, by the way, Hussein's brother, reached out to me and told me this was going to happen. And I said, do you have any proof? And like, he didn't really have proof. He just like, I'm his brother. I'm telling you it's him. So to bring it full circle, the guy who did it was arrested. That doesn't mean Ben is in the clear. But when I told them about it, the first thing that Cassie said when I said, and by the way, I didn't say that anybody stole the money from Bencoin or anything. I said that Hussein Faraj has been arrested for committing fraud. And Cassie shouts out, good, I hate that prick. She knew something was wrong with him from the get-go, but it was Ben's friend and he defended him at every step. So then when she finally told him what was going on, he's like, I don't believe it's him, but I'm so glad that somebody got arrested because this makes me look so bad and blah, 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 blah. And you know what I mean? So I don't think that Ben was behind it. I think that he just had a friend who was a scammer who saw an opportunity and had done it multiple times before. Nothing had come home to roost, and now it's all come home to roost, if you will. Sorry it took so long to explain it, but Bencoin was a big deal.
Wow. And this is the sort of stuff that happens in crypto. You can't trust anyone in crypto. I mean, in 2023, wasn't there some talks about you having a karate combat fight as well?
Yes. In fact, there were Rodney from My Crypto Journey. If you know Rodney's a friend of mine. Rodney was going to do it and he wanted me to fight him. Like maybe we could do something with Discover Crypto and turn it into Discover Crypto versus Bencoin or something like that. And that's when I found out they're only paying $5,000. I'm like, I'm not I can't risk myself for $5,000. But if I did, if I could make it a sideshow, in my mind, I'm like, you know what? If I could make it a sideshow, I would definitely do this. So Ben goes in and Ben sets up the fight, but Ben is making, I think Ben's cut is like 50 grand. You got to get me closer to that for me to put that kind of risk. Like I'm not taking headshots for $5,000. I make 4 times that amount every month just doing my job. There's no incentive for it, so there's no way that I'm going to do that. But for 15,000, 20,000, yeah, I would probably do it. So I said, I got to turn it into something crazy. So I then challenged TJ and Nick Demondi publicly. I kept challenging them every day. I will take you both on at the same time.
Oh gosh, such a male thing, isn't it? Oh,
well, and I was just like, again, I might have got my ass kicked. And by the way, I would not have gotten my ass kicked. I do fight. I am familiar with jujitsu. I am somebody who I'm 6 foot tall, 275 pounds. And I work out every day. I'm strong as an ox. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to be a tough out for anybody. And when I was younger, I boxed a lot. So I am very familiar, rudimentarily speaking, with combat sports. So I feel like I'm going to be able to account for myself. So I felt like I could take 2 guys at once. I felt these 2 guys for sure. Like they were going down. So I kept
What did-
challenging and kept challenging and kept challenging, and they never would say yes.
Okay, so they just denied it. Sorry, they just yeah. Okay, we'll just leave it there. But that's shocking that you'll take two guys on at once. Such a man thing. Talking about friendships, is that when 2023? Is that when you met Coinchick? Because I know you're very close to her.
Yeah, around that time, right? It was around that time, and it was because of Tom Crown.
Oh yes.
I don't talk about Tom Crown, but I'm a fan of Tom Crown. Like as a matter of fact, there were multiple people that, sometimes you have to learn this business and it's very difficult. So you need to have people that you think have information that's trustworthy. There was a guy named Frankie Candles. He was part of Discover Crypto. I didn't like what he was doing. I like him as an entertainer. I think he's an entertaining sort of guy. But what he was doing was kind of rudimentary, and he was wrong a lot because he doesn't he looks at technicals and he doesn't do sentiment. So I watched him for a little while and I'm like, you know what? Fundamentally, he's pretty sound. And I've learned what I need to know from this guy, but there's no real value to me. And by the way, if you're a neophyte to crypto and you're brand new to it and you want to learn, Frankie Candle's a great guy to learn from because it's fundamentals. But the heart of crypto, the just because a chart looks like it's going to do something doesn't mean it's going to. There's some overhang of real world sentiment and stuff like that. And I don't think Frankie ever really got that. Tom Crown, on the other hand, had the fundamentals and he understood how the market moves. And by the way, there were multiple people like Gareth Soloway. Gareth Soloway is one of the worst technical analysts that I've ever seen. I can't even imagine this guy has money at this point. He's never been right. Like I've never seen him go. And I watched a lot of Gareth Soloway to the point that, by the way, Gareth Soloway blocked me because I was pointing out everything he was doing wrong every day for a while because it just didn't make any sense. But Tom Crown, and through Tom Crown, I met Coincheck.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Gosh, so you had a very eventful 2023. So much went on. Let's talk about last year, 2024. Excellent year for Bitcoin. It went from 38,000 US dollars and it made a new all-time high before the halving, but also the actual all-time high in 2024 was, I think it was 108,000 US dollars. We had the ETFs and we also had Trump come in and he ran on crypto as well. What was 2024 like for you and your channel?
2024 was
oh, and we had that extended meme season. Do you remember? It just went on forever.
Yeah. 2024 was a very interesting time because at the end of 2023, and we're going to call it 2024, but like December, like a few days before Christmas, I lost my job. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm the vice president of a company. So at the end of 2023, I go into work one morning and my payment provider isn't working. And I'm in a collection agency. All we do is take payments from people. So all we can do is manually process it that day. And I call the owner. I'm like, hey man, the payment provider's down. And every once in a while, he's one of those slow pay guys. He always paid at the last minute, never paid anybody on time. He's just one of those guys. And I'm like, you know what, just get it turned back on, whatever. And then he's like, how much money? And then he calls me back like 2 hours later and he's like, how much is sitting there right now to be processed? And I'm like, I give him the number, like 13 grand or something like that. And he's like, okay. So then then an hour later, it's still not working. And then 2 hours later, it's still not working. And I'm like, what the is going on? So I call him. I'm like, hey man, I gotta leave. I gotta go. I go pick my son up. I'll be back in a few minutes. Somebody else is in charge while I'm gone. So I leave the office to go pick up my son from school. And while I'm on my way there, my phone rings and it's him. And he says, hey, it's Bob. And I said, hey, what's up, man? And he's like, yeah, I'm here with an attorney right now. Effective immediately, the office is closed. Your services are no longer required. Would you please go back to the office when you pick up your kid and tell everybody to get out? Thank them for their time. Thank them for everything. They will get paid their final paycheck. But after this, we're going to close down permanently. I just sold the business to this attorney. And I said, okay, so, picked up my son. I went back to the office, closed it down. That leads me into 2024. Okay. However, the day after I lose my job, my wallet gets hacked.
Oh my God.
My main wallet, and they stole $47,000 out of that wallet. And I lost it like that. I mean, just gone. And by the way, not only is that happening, I'm on vacation. I'm going on Christmas. I mean, everything at the worst possible time. Luckily, I have multiple wallets, so I'm not dead broke, but that was a big hit. So flash forward to 2024, and it starts off with a bang. Suddenly, people are, I'm getting good projects. I'm getting, I've got deals and stuff like that in place. I got plenty of stuff going on. So I don't worry about it financially. Then I got hacked again, just like 4 months later. And they stole, and by this point, I'm with a project called Devi, which is a new blockchain that's partnered with a major stock exchange. It's not announced publicly yet. It's not for public disclosure, but they've partnered with a major stock exchange, and they got some crazy stuff going on. Well, I'm partnered with them, and so that kind of becomes my bridge. And I have that and Luna Classic and all these different projects. And every month I just, kind of chug along, and I make a few bucks in the market, lose a few bucks in the market. We become scalpers instead of traders at this point. Like we're just, we're buying 50K market cap stuff and selling it 200K at this point because there's no more pump. All these cryptos right now that go to 1 million and then dump. They used to go to 150 million and then dump, but we're so diluted as a market and so screwed as a market that, just everything fundamentally changes. So 2024 is trying, but very nice at the same time. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stress involved because I got robbed and because I lost my job and stuff like that. But at the same time, I didn't really need a job to begin with. That was just my wake up call to just be crypto full time. Number one. And number two, stop letting people steal from you. So ultimately was a great year.
So tell me, why don't you have a Telegram or a Discord group?
I don't, because most of those become paid and they become something that people use to shill products or to shill different coins. And if it comes down to it, I don't like my people, the people that follow me, that trust my judgment. I don't like them being my exit liquidity. When you do something like that, you're incentivized to bring people into a new project. And I already have people that pay me for promos for that. I want them to make money. I don't want them to lose money. In order for that to happen, I can't take money from a project in their token or coin and then sell on my people at the top, because I'm just stealing money from them, in my opinion. And I'm better than that, or at least I consider myself to be better than that. And when I do, in the rare circumstance that I do, I'm always upfront about it. So if I want to do that, I'm going to do that in my private YouTube channel, because you can use private YouTube channel for the same purpose, or I can just do it publicly on Twitter. So I don't need more money from people to provide them with projects that want to wreck them anyway. Mm-hmm. My opinion.
Okay. And then just quickly, last year we also had Donald Trump become president. We had his coin, his Trump coin, and all the rest of it. What do you think of Donald Trump? And what do you think of him running on crypto?
My personal opinion of Donald Trump is not a good one. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, the man. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, the businessman. I am, however, a bit of a fan of Donald Trump, the politician, and not because I think that all of the things that he's doing are brilliant. I don't think that he's a genius. I don't think that he's even very, very smart. But he's very savvy when it comes to people, and he understands a lot about how people feel. And I think that he wants what's best for the people that follow him. Now, that may not align with a lot of people's belief systems, and he might not be everybody's cup of tea because he says exactly what he thinks when he thinks it, and that's a little bit weird for people. But at the same time, he is telling, and his candidacy, everything that he's doing is just really telling the world or the people that didn't vote for him in the United States, hey, I know you think things are fine, but things are not fine. And he is kind of I think that we're in an oligarchy. This is my opinion. I think that we've descended into this oligarchy sort of realm. And by the way, some people will say immediately, well, yeah, he's a billionaire and all of his friends are billionaires. Clearly, it's an oligarchy in the White House. And I understand where they're coming from, but they're not trying to control you. They're trying to govern you. The people that are trying to control you are the oil companies, are the insurance companies, are the auto manufacturers. The people that are trying to control you are the pharmaceutical companies. They're the ones that want control over you. The Trump administration, they just want to make opportunities for you. And by the way, they want an opportunity for you to be free of the government intruding in your life. And I really don't have a problem with that because, in fact, that is the principle of cryptocurrency. Like, that's the libertarian principles that we operate under. And, you know, not for nothing, if you look 30 years back and you look at the policies of Donald Trump and you look at the policies of the Democratic Party 30 years ago, Donald Trump is a Democrat. Most of the people that follow him are still Southern Democrats. Most of the people that believe in most of the things that he's talking about, they will align as a Democrat, as a typical liberal, I should say, not a Democrat. They would align as a liberal. His conservative principles are very few, increasing the amount of religion in our society. I fundamentally disagree with that, but I understand why you need it, and I do think that it makes a society a better society because because those people are then scared that, oh no, if I do something wrong, the spooky dude down below or the good dude up above is gonna, they're gonna either make me better or they're gonna haul me away. I think that it makes people as a society better. So I'm not opposed to it, but again, fundamentally, I don't rely on religion. To summarize, Donald Trump is not my cup of tea, but he's also somebody that I think that both the world and the United States desperately need. My final hope would be that when the next party comes into the office, or when his successor comes into the office, they're not as verbose. They're not as boisterous. They're not as, almost repugnant, I guess, for lack of a better word, morally compromised. They're not that person. I think that we would get a lot more accomplished if somebody other than Donald Trump were in charge. But again, his platform is the platform for crypto right now. So I'm going to support him as long as he's in the office.
Okay, let's look at 2025 now. So just before we touch upon your goals, how has 2025 been for you so far?
2025 has been quite a struggle as opposed to 2024.
Oh gosh.
I've made, look, I haven't done very much in the realm of promos in 2 months because the market is the market. When it's really, really down, when liquidity gets sucked out of like meme coins and stuff like that, then people don't want to promote their meme coin because, it's not going to go very far. So, you get those situations. I was partnered with Bleeve for 1 year. That partnership ended after 1 year and they chose not to renew. Do what?
Who's Debbie?
Bleeve, Devve. Okay. Yeah, it's a blockchain project. Again, this is what I said before. They're partnered with a major stock exchange. And I used to get tokens from them, which will be coins at some point, but tokens right now every month to promote their project. And they just decided not to renew. Luna Classic, same thing. They just decided, I'm not with Luna Classic. I'm actually with Terraport and Terra Casino, and they decided not to renew. The market conditions have not been conducive to companies paying people. So, it's just been YouTube money that I live on and a little bit of promo here and there and money that I've made because, the month before that was really, really good. So, and the month before that was really, really good. So mixed bag so far this year. Also, we never got the bull run that we were looking for. And we were looking for that bull run to start in January and February and March and April. And then we were all going to sell in May and walk
Go
away.
away. Yeah.
And now we can't do that because the market didn't do what the market was supposed to do. And most of that is because of Donald Trump, not in the bad way, though. He's got it's in the way that for 30 years now, actually for 60 years now, our politicians have been destroying our markets, fundamentally breaking down the structure of the way that we can operate. Sorry, my dog's going crazy. And it has to be fixed. And he's the only person right now that's willing to try. And I don't know I don't know if his fixes are even good fixes. It seems fundamentally to me like tariffs are a good idea, not because it makes things more expensive, but because it incentivizes people to buy American products or buy from preferred countries and stuff like that, and stop getting the super cheap stuff from overseas that's made in bulk and stuff like that. So, the tariffs are not to me about raising revenue. I know he says that. I don't agree with that, but it's about buying more American and bringing manufacturing and jobs back to America. And fundamentally, if somebody says, well, yeah, you're not going to make paper clips in a factory in the United States. Well, I'm not talking about paper clips, asshole. I'm talking about everything else, that we could make in America. Let's bring it back and let's, turn America into a manufacturing hub as best we can. We won't get everything right, but we'll get some things right. And that's good enough. So, when all of this starts to wear out, though, the United States is required at this point to start quantitative easing. If they want this market to soar, they're going to have to start to inject liquidity. Not only is that the case, but don't forget that the Trump administration has asked for $5 trillion additional dollars in order to really effectively do what they want to do, which is to start to bring this debt down and to start to create this sort of circumstance. And he's going to get it because Republicans are in charge. So that means they're going to turn the money printer back on, and we're going to start a quantitative easing phase. Not only that, but we've got rate cuts coming. So I am incredibly bullish ultimately on 2025. I'm just annoyed that we didn't get there a lot quicker because Trump had to do what he had to do to try to fix a lot of the problems that we have that are inherent with our current political structure and system.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, what are your goals for 2025?
My goals for 2025, number one, 230 pounds. That's a personal goal on weight. I'm at 270 right now. So I want to lose another 40 pounds. I want that six-pack ab. Never had six-pack abs, or at least I haven't since I was 26, I want to say. So been a very, very long time. So I want to get back to that, number one, personally, and continue to stay healthy. Number two, like to make my first million. I do think that, I do. One of the products that I talked about here, Devve, Devve, I told you they're partnered with a major stock exchange. Well, the announcement hasn't been made yet. So when it gets made, I do think it's an easy 20 or 30 or 40X, and it'll probably explode. And, I've got enough projects and enough crypto laying around that if we actually get a bull run, a full on bull run, that, I'll have made millions of dollars. So what I want, a little bit of financial freedom, a little bit of financial security, and a lot of good health in my life.
Oh, I wish you luck in that. They're good girls. Bleeves, it was lovely having you on today, and thank you so much for sharing your crypto journey so far.
Pleasure was all mine. You were wonderful.